How about a big Zest Fest welcome for Chef Ilie Spilca?
Morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today? All right, my name's Chef Ilie Spilca. Like you said, I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm happy to represent the Casa and Spice program, just a great seasoning company. Mike and Manny become really good friends of mine. I actually met them last year at our Zest Fest, which is called the Fiery Food Show. And we kind of just hung out, spoke about food, the love of spices and different stuff like that. And, the rest is kind of history. So I'm happy to come and show you guys how to do one of my favorite things, of course, is prime rib. Being from New Mexico, we love our chili, and being at the Zest Fest, I thought we'd spice it up a little bit. So I'll show you exactly how we start with the nice piece of prime rib. I actually have some Hatch, New Mexico powdered red chili, which I know everybody in the state of Texas knows is the best chili, right? Hatch. So what I do is just get a nice little helping of red chili and just kind of pour it all over. And then I follow it up with some Casa M Spice Cattle Drive. The nice thing about Casa M Spice is that they have specific seasonings for specific meats. So there's the Cattle Drive, obviously, for steaks. We have the whole hog, which is for your ribs or your pulled porks or your different stuff like that. 2 seasonings for poultry. And then we also have our new one, which is a jerk seasoning, which I'm very excited about because it's fantastic. So after we season our prime rib nicely, wrap it up, throw it in the oven. All right, now we can move on to our mushroom and asparagus risotto. This is pretty much one of my favorite rice dishes, if you will. My wife doesn't love it too much. She calls it mushy rice, but that's okay. So we dice up some onions. And get them in our pot. I have some chicken stock already going, really nice and hot. I think that's one of the keys to having a good risotto is having your stock ready and going hot, because if not, it takes too long and the rice does tend to break down a little more than it should. Get a little butter in there. A little bit of olive oil. All right, then we're gonna dice up a little bit of garlic to go in there also. All right. So while that's getting sauteed a little bit, I would just like to saute it down just a little bit till it gets a little translucent, and try not to burn anything, especially the garlic. It starts to tend to get a little bitter. So if you see it going a little bit, just throw a little bit of your broth in there. All right. Now we're ready for some of our risotto, a barrio rice. And remember, just like with any kind of rice, a little bit goes a long way. It does tend to puff up a lot. So I like to give it a little bit of chance to absorb some of the butter and the onions and the garlic flavor. Get a little toasty before we start putting a lot of our stock in. So a lot of people are kind of afraid to do risotto because with rice, it's kind of like you just measure it, throw it in the pot, let it go, it does itself. Risotto needs a little extra love. You need to kind of move it around a little bit, tell them it looks nice, oh, you're such a good risotto, you know, stuff like that. All right. So really the main thing is you just got to keep a really good eye on it because you don't want the stock to go too far down because then it'll start sticking and burning. So just keep an eye on it, keep it moving a little bit. You don't have to put it on high. So then we'll cut up some of our baby bell mushrooms. Oh, I almost got the best part. Of course, a little bit of white wine.
Chef, is that one of those where it takes 2 cups of white wine, 1 for the dish and 1 for the chef, that kind of thing?
It's like a 3-cupper. It's 2 in 1.
There we go. My apologies.
All right, so we got our mushrooms cut up a little bit. Keeping an eye on this. All right, so we'll start on getting our green beans ready, cutting off these little stems. I like green beans because they're so versatile. You can do so many things with them. You know, saute them. If I'm doing like a veggie tray, they hold very well after you cook them, or even par-cook them, even parboil them. You can do many things with them, and they stand up very well, unlike some other vegetables. So it goes nicely with this meal because you know, a little green on your plate, even though the prime rib is a star, it makes it look nice, right? All right. All right, so our rice is looking real good, going nicely. Just every once in a while, give it a little more love. So once I start seeing the results will start to come together a little bit, then I'll go ahead and throw in my mushrooms. Right. Then we'll cut up some of this really nice asparagus. All right. Everything looking real nice. We'll check on our prime rib here in a second. So what I usually like to do is with the prime rib, I'll have a thermostat in there. So a lot of people go, oh, you cook it for 5 minutes per pound or 30 seconds per ounce or whatever. every prime rib is different. Depends on how much marbling there is, depending on how big it is, depending how cold it is outside. All that kind of stuff matters. So I tell everybody, invest in like a $25 digital thermometer, and that comes straight to your phone. You just stick it right in, and once it hits about 135, you pull it out, let it rest 10 or 15 minutes. You got a really nice medium rare prime rib. And I've seen it vary so much between 20 to 30 minutes difference from what I've done it a week before. So it's just one of those things where you really just got to monitor it by temperature other than by time, you know. And me living in Albuquerque and such a high altitude also matters about how long you would cook or bake anything. So I always tell people to invest in a little thermostat, a little digital thermostat, and that'll help. All right, we'll go check on our prime rib here in a second. It's weird cooking in somebody else's kitchen. You just gotta double check everything twice.
Chef, if any of our guests here have any questions, will you entertain some questions?
Yes, please. If anybody has any questions.
Anybody got a question, just raise your hand. We'll bring the mic to you. On my way. Question right up front, Chef.
Hi, and we lived in Albuquerque 35 years.
Nice.
So tell us more about the meat. All we saw, spices on it in the oven. You made it look way too easy. Where did you start with the meat?
Well, so I started cooking it earlier. So prime rib takes a little bit longer. So you can get prime rib pretty much anywhere you want. I find that one of the best places to get it is Costco. They have really good quality meat. They've never let me down, and they've always had decent prices. Very nice marbling. So what we just started with the whole vacuum sealed prime rib. And then what I did is just rub it down with red chili, really good, and then with cattle drive, covered it in the oven at 350 until it reached 131 degrees on my digital thermostat. I know right here I just kind of rubbed it down and I threw it in the oven, but it took about I had a whole about 17-pound prime rib. It took in a professional convention oven, it took 2 hours and about 15 minutes. So, but I had two different ones. So I had one of them finished in a little under 2 hours, and the other one finished in a little over 2 hours. So that's a perfect example of why you should have something with a couple probes, just so you know when to pull it. And they both came out really good. So thank you for your question. All right, let's check on our risotto a little bit here. Looks like it's coming on really nicely. All right, we saute a little bit of our green beans then.
Chef, is that extra virgin olive oil? What kind of oil are you using?
That is extra virgin olive oil, yeah. I also do like the avocado oil that Dana used yesterday for her demonstration. It all depends on you, though. You know, obviously the avocado oil is going to be a little more expensive, but extra virgin with a little bit of non-salted butter works every time. So, all right, and then I like to use a little bit of the chain reaction on my green beans here. It gives a little bit of that kick, and it doesn't change the flavoring too much. So chain reaction is, if you all don't know, is the base seasoning for the Casa M spice. So this is what kind of started it all, and from what I know, this is probably one of the most popular ones. I know it is at my cafe. I love the seasoning so much that I actually sell them in the shakers at my cafe for Casa M spice because I believe in them so much. Like, one of the best things about the seasoning is that the ingredients list isn't half your display right here, you know? It's got 5 or 6 really good ingredients, and it's very low sodium. So especially for people that have restricted diets with very low sodium diets, then this is a perfect seasoning for them because one of the main things that I see in seasonings whenever you go to the store, which, now there's rows and rows of seasonings nonstop. Everybody's got one, right? The biggest thing is the high sodium content because it's a filler, They want to get as much product out there no matter what the quality is. And so that's where I really kind of fell in love with the Casa and Spice people, because that's not what they're about. Because they don't have so much ingredients like fillers and different stuff like that, you don't need as much. As a chef at home, 2 months to go through that. And I use it a lot, And so that's what people kind of don't understand, because the other seasonings, you just have to you're sitting there just pouring on it nonstop because of all the extra crap that is in there, in a sense, All right, our beans looking nice and ready. Risotto's coming out really, really nice. So like right about this time, I like to go ahead and just shut it off, because now it's done really cooking and it's just really absorbing that last bit of stock. You know what I mean? So you really don't want it to get to the point where it breaks down too much. You still want it a little bit al dente, to the tooth. So I turn it off right now, and I always add my Parmesan cheese at the end, because I always find out that if I'm adding as I go, then whenever I finish up on the bottom of the pan, it's just a nice burnt layer of cheese and risotto, because that's what cheese does, it burns. So after I turn it off, that's when I go ahead and add my, my Parmesan cheese. So do y'all live now here from Albuquerque? Yeah? Now you're here? Nice. I knew it was going to run somebody from Albuquerque, at least one, right? When I went to school in South Carolina, it's funny, what the biggest thing I missed was that yellow license plate. I would see license plates from everywhere, Texas, California, and I was like, dang it, I have not seen one yellow license plate. And the first time, I remember like it was yesterday, which wasn't yesterday, but first time that I saw a yellow license plate was I was going back to Albuquerque from Charleston. I went to the Citadel, and I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was going through that huge loop. I don't know if anybody's been there. And bam, there was my first yellow license plate that I've seen in over a year. I was so excited. It's the little things, All right. So, where is my... Oh, give me 1 second, sorry. I need a plate. A plate. Sorry, I thought I had everything, but one plate. Thank you, my dear. All right. Now that the risotto is almost done, turn everything off here.
And this is so important, Chef. It's a lost art, and that's the presentation. It can taste like $1 million, but if it doesn't look like $1 million, you'll never know.
So, what they say, it's you eat with your nose first, right? So you come in somewhere and it smells delicious. I'm already hungry. Then you eat with your eyes. If you see something, you're like, oh my goodness, what is that? It starts those juices flowing, So presentation, smell, all that stuff is really important. I think that, like you said, if it looks delicious, even if it might be not that delicious, but if it looks great, you're like, okay, it was good. All right, we'll let that sit. Let me get my prime rib out.
And as you get that out, Chef, I also noticed lots of different knives that you've been using, and then high quality cutlery you have to have that to be even a home cook, much less a chef.
Correct. I think that's one of the big things that I've learned whenever I go to let's say to cook at my friend's Super Bowl party, right? I know two things that I always have to bring with me is my knife set and a cutting board, because I'm always so surprised of how poor knives lots of people have. Some people don't even have cutting boards. I'm like, how do you cut your anything, you know? And so, yeah, I always tell them, and it's funny because once I become really good friends with you, usually the first present I give you is a good knife. Because whenever I go over there, I want to make sure that I have at least one good knife that works good over there, right? But yeah, I actually had these custom made because they have the Romanian flag colors in there. So, thank you for nursing. All right, so we got our prime rib then. All right, put my gloves over here. Anyways, so let's see how this turned out. I always like to save all the extra. My dad used to call it natural gravy, all au jus or whatever you like to call it, because I mean it is the natural juices that have come from the meat, and usually those are the most seasoned part because a lot of the seasons come down with it and stuff like that. So I always save that. I mean, why not, right? Saves you time for making any other kind of au jus or anything like that. All right, the result looks great. So the end piece is always the chef piece. That's what I call it. All right. Excellent. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it came out real nice. A nice medium to medium rare. And a very important thing that also a lot of people may not know about a prime rib is that if you have had it in the oven for 2.5 hours, you need to at least rest it. And I cover it and put it like above my oven or somewhere that's not cold but not lukewarm. I mean, and not really hot. So right in the middle. So I give it not a tight cover, but just maybe some foil over it and let it sit for 30 minutes. A lot of people are like, well, it's gonna go cold. Not if you keep it covered and in a nice warm place, then it lets the juices distribute a little bit. As you can see, there's not a whole bunch of juices just that fell out after I cut the meat. That's a very important step in cooking prime rib also. So let's get this on the plate. Sorry, after you're used to wearing gloves nonstop, that's what you do. It's a habit. I even have them at home. All right. So I think an important part of presentation of plate is making sure that not too much is hidden. Like if you have a starch or a veggie or something, you don't just plop a big huge protein on top of it and then you're cutting through, oh, well, I didn't know there was a veggie underneath there, you know, something like that. Then just spoon right here. And especially since this is a red chili crusted with a lot of the cattle drive on there, you got a nice red coloring au jus in here. So I just like to put a little bit all over the meat like that. Give it a little bit of that extra flavoring. And voila. There we go, red chili crusted prime rib.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chef. Any more questions of Chef Spilca before we start sampling? I think they're just hungry, Chef.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I hear it.
Thank you so much, Chef Ilie
Thank you, Chef
Spilca.
Fest.
Chili crusted prime rib coming up on the sampling table. Thank you, Chef, and our friends at Casa M Spice Company. Thanks, everybody. We'll have sampling over here at the sampling station on stage left. Compliments of our friends at DFW Canines for Vets.